Good evening, welcome to Thursday, the 4th of January 2021's edition of MesmePolitics. My name's Toby Lepati Mesme, and welcome along for the next half hour. Between right now and 7:30, we will be talking about Article 16. What is it? What's going to happen? What should happen with the wrangling over Northern Ireland? The Democratic Parties is our leading story today. The Democratic Party's new strategy to keep the House in the 2022 midterms is based around QANON, we discuss. Boris Johnson's polling bounce incoming. And in a little bit, I want to talk to you about Keir Starmer and spy cops and his ties to it. To them. To the idea. To the abstract concept. Or the sinister reality of being seduced by undercover police officers. So, I want to open with a new poll for the 25th of January to the 1st of February. The graph is courtesy of Stats for Lefties, and it is a poll by Number Cruncher Politics. Voting intention in Britain, 43% Conservative, 37% Labour. That would translate to a Tory majority, 336 seats, to 231 for Labour, almost identical to the 2015 general election result, including the huge result for the SNP right there. That is the state of play in Britain in terms of the polls. Now, I want to bring it up because what we see right now, it's here, it's beginning, is the Boris Johnson polling bounce. We've been expecting it. The feel-good factor, the vaccine bounce, is incoming. And over the next few months and years, the feel-good politics of Boris Johnson that tanked so badly in the pandemic and just was really jarring in the middle of a national crisis will really work. The gung-ho, the bluster. That is what people are going to want as we vaccinate and we're all feeling quite good and we're going out in the summer and all this sort of stuff, right? Save a terrible resurgence of the virus, that style of leadership is suddenly going to ring very well with the public. I say leadership with air quotes. And for a while, the Tories are going to be, perhaps indefinitely, but at least for a while, the Tories are going to be riding high. The issue then for them is over the next few years, going into 2023, going into 2024, the reality of the situation, the post-vaccine, post-lockdown buzz, not post-COVID so much, but post-dark period of COVID buzz, begins to die down. The reality of the situation and the economic pain people will start feeling as the economy really contracts, and we really feel that play out over the long term. That will kick in. It may kick in before 2024's election. It may kick in after the sort of post-crisis boom, where everything's sort of feeling all right, even though everything's dire. It's better than it was, sort of thing. That will be Labour's way in 2024. That will be the Tories' foible in 2024. That will be what, if anything, unseats the Tories. It's still not likely, but if it's anything, it will be the simple fact that people will not be feeling very well off. Not even well off to the extent they were in 2019, after, a decade of stagnation, when still Labour failed to capitalise on that. So, for a number of reasons, mainly the Brexit culture war, above anything else, it trumped all economic calculations. Labour's hope is that economic calculations come back into the fore before 2024. If it's done on social values, however many flags Labour drape themselves in, the Tories will clean up in 2024. Keir Starmer is on the attack about securing our borders. Have a listen.
We're calling for quarantine for everybody who arrives in the UK from any country. There will have to be exceptions for medicines and foods, there always is. But for everybody else that's not within exemptions, a full quarantine. And the reason for that is because in the first wave, 0.1% of cases came from China, where we had restrictions. 62% came from France and from Spain, where we didn't have restrictions. And there's every reason to think that the variant will behave in the same way. So that's why we're saying to the government, we're in a race now, virus against vaccination. Let's secure our borders while we carry out the vaccination process.
Yesterday, the Prime Minister said complete border controls in the UK are not a practical solution. Do you accept the wider impact tougher quarantine measures could cause?
Look, of course, tough quarantine measures have an impact, and in a sense, nobody wants that. But if a variant gets through that isn't subject to the vaccine, we're going to go back to square one. And that's months of impact on the economy, huge damage to the economy. So the risk is huge if we don't secure our borders. And I think most people would say, for heaven's sake, now we've got the vaccine being rolled out, don't put that at risk.
How effective are these measures, border controls, if new variants have already been identified in the UK? Does it unnecessarily cripple the travel industry if they're not an effective measure to curbing the spread of new variants?
Well, the whole point here is that the government hasn't had effective checks in place. It's had a very limited quarantine system in place, with only, I think, about 3% of people being checked. That is why the government itself knows that it's got to toughen up the approach, and it's taken a step in the right direction, but it needs to go the whole way and actually secure our borders. And lots of people, I think, will be scratching their heads and say, how come our schools are closed, but our borders are open?
That's Keir Starmer there, saying the risk is huge if we don't secure our borders. It's an interesting place, Labour pushing with the Tories to be stronger on borders. It's obviously the right thing to do at this time. Here's Matt Hancock responding.
Well, clearly we're always looking to make sure we have more security at the borders. Hence, we brought in the need for isolation for everybody arriving in this country.
But on this specific policy, it still hasn't been announced when it will be announced. So why is there such a delay? Where is the urgency here with this policy?
Well, there isn't a delay. What there is work to make sure that the border is always as secure as it needs to be. As I say, we've brought in that full isolation. Well, clearly
That's Matt Hancock there. Over to Spy Cops, and a group of environmental campaigners want Keir Starmer to give evidence to a public inquiry into undercover policing and questions over whether he was involved in a cover-up while he was Director of Public Prosecutions in England and Wales. They are demanding to know if the Labour leader helped to conceal how the actions of undercover officers caused the wrongful prosecutions of themselves and other campaigners. 18 activists have issued a statement asking Starmer and others to give evidence to the public inquiry to, quote, get to the truth about non-disclosure, prosecutions and miscarriages of justice that involved undercover police officers. The inquiry is examining how the police had sent at least 139 undercover officers to spy on more than 1,000 political groups since the inception of that secret operation in 1968. The Labour leader did not give comment, but party sources said Starmer has also been called to give evidence, has not been called to give evidence so far. It is understood that he considers his response to the case involving the activists to be widely documented as a matter of public record. So, here's an interesting thing, right? Keir Starmer sold himself as the lefty human rights lawyer, right? The progressive, fighting for trade unionist causes. When an actual sober analysis of his record, it's far worse than any of us might have thought until you'd really looked into it. It is much more along the lines of spy cop than lefty lawyer. God, I wish he was really a lefty lawyer. That would be quite good, wouldn't it? He's really not. He was more a figure who upheld the will of the establishment with a massive metaphorical truncheon. He conned Labour members by selling a very, very selective account of his past, a very, very specific version of himself. He should obviously be held to account on this. I don't care about the political ramifications. He should be held to account on this matter and answer to the people who've suffered because of it. The media seems to be turning on him now, not because of anything related to this, just generally. Establishment commentary. The establishment has been Starmer's biggest backing since the beginning. They almost prefer him to Boris Johnson. And now the sort of liberal establishment, they're writing pieces about why he's not up to the job. This is going to culminate with trying to put someone even more right-wing than Keir Starmer in there. Heaven forbid we have a taste of Starmer's very, very, very mild conception of something resembling, a murdered version of social democracy. we do need to remember, we keep talking about the Red Wall winning voters back, right? But do wake up and realise that Labour has been in slow decline since 2001. And the one election, the single election that arrested that terminal decline, that was clearly terminal, come 2015, was the big spike in 2017 under one man's leadership, and that man was Jeremy Corbyn. That doesn't mean Jeremy Corbyn is the answer to all Labour's problems. Did you see the 2019 result? But what it does tell us is the only election since 2001 where Labour increased its vote share was 2017. So this isn't Corbyn bad. If we just go with Corbyn bad, that's the Labour strategy at the moment, then we're not going to get anywhere. Because Ed Miliband wasn't Corbyn and he flopped. Gordon Brown definitely wasn't Corbyn and he flopped. Blue Labour doesn't work. Milibandism doesn't work. The soft left clearly doesn't work. Something has to be done, right? And we have to realise that. People in the Labour Party aren't realising that. They're not serious. Which is why Labour is in so much trouble. It should be competitive the next election, but if we carry on this route, it won't be. Keir Starmer keeps saying ridiculous stuff that it's going to alienate his base. People dismiss the need to have a base, but if you don't have the base, you have no vote from which to build off and bring in swing voters. Saying the royal family are a beacon of light, all the flag stuff, it is very gradually going to turn off ethnic minority voters and younger voters. And that is Labour scuppered now, but more importantly, in the long term. And we need to realise that. And the patriotism thing, flags as a means to an end, or talking about Britain as a means to an end, great, okay? Many left-leaning politicians have done that throughout the ages. Michael Foot, Clem Attlee, Harold Wilson, great. The problem here is, Keir Starmer's patriotism is not, here's my big, bold agenda, I'm going to sell it with patriotism. No, Keir Starmer's agenda is purely, we're going to shag some flags, right? And that is where it leans into nationalism. It's not the invocation of talking about a country or a flag. That has to be done as the calculation. Corbyn, I say Corbyn should have done it more. If he did it more, it would have seemed inauthentic, and he did perfectly fine without it in 2017. But of course, that sort of image thing is something Corbyn was never cut out for because he was not a career politician. But the thing about Keir Starmer is if he just does this as a means to an end, it would be so vacuous, so inauthentic. Corbyn's selling point was how authentic he was. The inauthenticity of this will make it crash and burn even more than someone voters view as unpatriotic, clearly. What's worse than unpatriotic, quote unquote? It's nonsense, but that's the perception in some cases. Fake patriotic. Surely that's not good. Anyway, over to the United States, and Bernie Sanders is giving an interview on the COVID relief bill, which he's optimistic about.
I know you were among the committee chairs who actually met with President Biden at the White House earlier today on this COVID relief plan. What sort of progress did you make in that meeting? Where does it stand right now?
Well, I think it stands in a very good place. The point that the president made that has to be made over and over again is that we are living in a moment where tens and tens of millions of working class and middle class people are hurting. These are people who are worried about being evicted from their homes. They're worried about feeding their kids. They're worried about being able to afford to go to the doctor. They're worried about seeing their kids get a decent education. They're worried about the need for vaccinations to be distributed faster than they are right now. So we face a terrible, terrible moment in American history, probably worse than any time since the Great Depression. And what President Biden was clear about is that now is the time to keep faith with the American people. The people are hurting. We're not going to turn our backs on them. We're going to go forward, and we're going to start dealing with some of these major crises in an effective way.
As you know, Senator, the president has said he's open to making some stimulus checks more narrowly targeted. Right now, they start phasing out for people earning $75,000, couples earning $150,000. Are you willing, you personally, Senator, to lower the eligibility for these checks? These are people, some of whom have lost their jobs, but many of them are still working.
No. The issue is not, I think, going below $75,000 for an individual or $150,000 for a couple. The issue is that there is some spillover. If you have kids, that families making $250,000 or $300,000 may end up getting some assistance. And I think we can eliminate that. But the truth of the matter is these income levels are based on people's income of a year ago or even 2 years ago. Many of those people are hurting today. And the truth is, you could be making a family making $125,000 with a bunch of kids. You are struggling today. So what we have got to do is understand this crisis impacts the middle class, it impacts the working class, it impacts lower income people. We are in this together. Meanwhile, the very, very rich are becoming phenomenally richer. So we need policies now where the government stands up for working families and the middle class and tells, by the way, the wealthiest people in this country, you know what? You're going to stop paying your fair share of taxes.
It sounds like you and President Biden are on the same page on this issue. Senator Mitt Romney, as you well know, he says not a single Republican will vote for the current Biden relief bill, the bill that as it currently stands. We know President Biden would like to see some bipartisan support. Do you see that as a priority to make some changes to try to win over at least a few Republican votes?
No. The priority that I see is addressing the crises facing working families.
Very good from Bernie Sanders, as always, hitting the nail right there on the head. So over to the main story of the day. House Democrats are preparing to centre their strategy for the far-off midterm elections in 2022 on a simple, aggressive message. Republicans are the party of QAnon. This is from Politico. Making an unusually early move to protect their narrow majority, House Democrats' campaign arm on Tuesday launched its first TV ad campaign, spotlighting supporters of the fringe conspiracy theory, including those who stormed the US Capitol on January the 6th. It is the first step in a larger plan, orchestrated by the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee's new chair, Sean Patrick Maloney of New York, to exploit the growing friction between Trump hardliners and establishment Republicans in the GOP base, which Maloney sees as a weak point for the party. Saying if Kevin McCarthy wants to take his party down to crazy town and follow these dangerous ideas, he shouldn't expect them to do well at the next election. And it's important the country knows that the Democratic Party continues to be, don't make me laugh, the responsible adult. Maloney said the campaign message crystallised after pro-Trump siege on January the 6th, which was fuelled in part by false internet theories, saying it was at the heart of the violent attack on the Capitol, but it had roots going back years. So, this does have more bite as a political strategy than some people think. Branding your opponents as extremists or too far right or too far left, generally too far left, but let's see if it works with too far right, is an age-old political tactic in America, and it does work. It really does work, right? Barry Goldwater was painted as too far right, too extreme, and he lost in a shocking landslide to President Johnson. That is something you can do. It does have bite as an age-old political strategy. It's one of the ways Johnson was able to completely steamroll a Jeremy Corbyn in the end. It's not necessarily the candidate's extremism, it's just painting them as extreme. In this case, they actually are extreme, really extreme, in a way Democrats have never been and will never be. The problem is there's been a lot of classist language. This quote here, they can do QAnon or they can do college-educated voters. They cannot do both. So we're continuing on the pointless hunt for white suburban voters rather than the multi-racial, multicultural, working-class coalition that put Biden in the White House. And that is the Democrats' key. Turning them out is the Democrats' key to continued hegemony in 2022. The strategy is being drawn up by elitist liberals who are going to lead their party to defeat. This strategy will not work one bit if the American people are still hurting. If Democrats don't deliver tangible, real improvements and results in people's lives, this strategy won't work. This strategy only works if it goes hand in hand with Democrats delivering on bold, progressive priorities between now and 2022. It must be both. It cannot be one or the other. It doesn't need to be zero-sum. You can do the delivering and you can do the attacks, right? That's what has to be done. The House is wobbling. The Senate is probably steady for 2022. Unless this goes really badly, the House is definitely wobbling. The House will tip to the Republicans oh so easily, thanks to redistricting come 2022. And we all don't want to see Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House, though at the moment Nancy Pelosi is god-awful, so it's hard to imagine it getting worse. But under McCarthy, it would. I was saying Democrats should not not avoid embarrassing Republicans, should go on the attack. It's good that they're going to. But it needs to be tough, it needs to be relentless, it needs to be all-encompassing. Not just about an abstract conspiracy theory. They need to tie it into what they're voting for, what they're voting against, how it impacts on acquittal of President Trump. And on top of all that, it has to be packaged in with an inclusive message and delivering real, tangible benefits. That's the key component. Real, tangible, material, big, bold, progressive benefits for the American people. Be the party, not of we don't like QAnon, Republicans bad, Orange Man bad. Be the party of all that, but more importantly, the party of $2,000 stimulus checks. The party of class solidarity. That's what they need to do. Here is the first advert, the QAnon ad by the Democrats. Have a listen.
QAnon, a conspiracy theory born online, took over the Republican Party, sent followers to Congress, and with Donald Trump, incited a mob that attacked the Capitol and murdered a cop. Then Trump and Republicans in Congress sided with the violent QAnon mob. Congressman Mike Garcia should have stood with us, but he was a coward. He voted to protect Trump. Congressman Mike Garcia, he stood with Q, not you. DCCC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Look, it's just... I'm all for, and I said this a matter of hours ago, Democrats should be running ads tying Republicans to the insurrection. But the angle, the QAnon angle here, is too abstract. It needs to be really materially, they're about the insurrection, right? They're quote-unquote un-American. Those sort of attacks, which I don't necessarily agree with, just on principle, they are the sort of things. If you're going to get down in the mud, really get down in the mud, not just QAnon, because I don't know how much that will be recognised and how much people will actually care, unfortunately. Although everything said in that advertisement is, of course, true. Although it is, it's quite fun, isn't it? They've been on the internet reading conspiracies again. The Democratic Party has never got the tone right. It clearly doesn't know how to talk to ordinary Americans. But we work with what we've got. Now, the Brexit Agreement's Northern Ireland Protocol will not be scrapped. The Irish government and the EU have said in an escalating row over the new trade barriers down the Irish Sea. The Democratic Unionist Party leader, Arlene Foster, has called for the measure designed to keep the Irish land border open to be replaced. But Dublin is focused on easing problems with the post-Brexit trade deal that have caused disruption at Irish ports. The Irish Foreign Minister, Simon Coveney, told BBC Ulster, quote, "There is not going to be very dramatic change. We want the protocol to function in the way that works for everyone, north and south, on the island of Ireland." Michael Gove and Selkovic will meet again next week. It is understood a specialised committee dedicated to the working out of the protocol will be established in the coming days to move those talks on, with the meeting of UK-EU Joint Committee chaired by Gove and Sefcovic penciled in for mid-March. That's, of course, the European Commission Vice President Markos Sefcovic, who has said the UK and EU have a shared commitment to the proper implementation of the protocol. Michael Gove hit out on this recently, basically saying trust has eroded between the UK and the EU as a result of these goings-on.
On Friday afternoon, the European Commission, without prior consultation, published a regulation to enable restrictions on the export of vaccines from the EU. That regulation also invoked Article 16 of the Northern Ireland Protocol, barring the free movement of medicines from Ireland into Northern Ireland. It's important to be clear about what was proposed. Not only plans to stop vaccines being delivered through legally binding contracts at the height of a pandemic, but also, and critically, a unilateral suspension of the painstakingly designed and carefully negotiated provisions of the protocol, which the EU has always maintained was critical to safeguarding the gains of the Northern Ireland peace process. Article 16 exists for good reasons, but it is meant to be invoked only after notification, only after all other options are exhausted, and in the interests of the people of Northern Ireland. Mr. Speaker, none of these conditions were met. Worse still, neither the UK government representing the people of Northern Ireland, nor the Irish government, an EU member, were informed. The Commission's move has provoked anger and concern across all the parties and throughout civil society in Northern Ireland, as well as international condemnation. Following the reaction, the Commission did withdraw its invocation of Article 16 and subsequently clarified, in conversations with my right honourable friend the Prime Minister, that it would not interfere with vaccine supplies to Great Britain and to Northern Ireland. I'm grateful to the Prime Minister for his robust and sensitive intervention, and also to the Taoiseach, the Northern Ireland Executive, and Vice President Maroš Šefčovič for moving quickly to resolve this situation on Friday evening. But trust has been eroded, damage has been done, and urgent action is therefore needed. Peace, progress and strong community relations in Northern Ireland have been hard won. And in recent days we've seen an increase in community tension. And, as was reported last night, port staff in Belfast and Larne have been kept away from work following concerns for their safety.
That's Michael Gove there. So it is a fact. It's a fact the government won't admit. It's a fact the DUP happened to be pushing. The Johnson deal was always fatally flawed, particularly in this area. The Johnson Brexit deal basically shafted Northern Ireland, left them in the middle of an irredeemable situation. This has always been a really volatile situation. It's been used as a political football by both the UK government, quite shamelessly, and now the EU Commission, equally shamelessly, and in many ways worse, because they did it once the ink had dried on the paper. The situation as it is right now isn't sustainable for Irish people or Irish businesses. We know that. Boris Johnson is rubbing his hands with glee because he can now do whatever he wants and still have the moral high ground. That's not a great prospect, but action may need to be taken to alter this protocol one way or the other. I'm not entirely sure what way, I'm not entirely sure what should be done. It is really, we're all out of our depth on this. It's an extremely sensitive issue. The government will now basically have, free rein to do what it wants. It is not in any way, it just can't carry on, right? It was always going to be temporary, but now the EU have basically let the horse spring from the stables, and the direct result of that is, right from the hardcore unionist to the hardcore nationalist end of the Irish spectrum, politically, they're all going to be calling for this thing to be scrapped or changed. This is Arlene Foster calling the EU hostile and aggressive.
This is an incredibly hostile and aggressive act by the European Union bloc. They are trying to stop the supply of a vaccine designed to save lives into the United Kingdom. For years, we were told after the European Union referendum vote that there couldn't be a hard border on the island of Ireland. And in one fell swoop, they have put that hard border in place. We now say to our own government, the government of the United Kingdom, that they need to take robust measures to deal with this issue, including triggering Article 16, because of course we need to deal with the supply of critical goods into Northern Ireland as well.
That's the DUP there, basically being shafted by the Tory government after they helped them stay in power. That's what you get. Ask the Lib Dems. Never help the Tories stay in power as a minority government. It really never, ever ends well for any parties involved. And I don't know why they keep making their mistakes. Sort of like, the curse. And the DUP are like, oh, it won't be as, we'll be fine this time. No, you got shafted. May didn't shaft you, but Boris Johnson certainly did. You really do despair at the fact, basically, the entire collective political class of Europeans and Brits denied the problem, ignored the problem, let it get to the point where we're here and we're talking about redoing it. Deeply unserious people on all sides of the issue here. Well, that was loud, wasn't it? That was Thursday's edition of MesmePolitics. My name's Toby Lepati Mesme. Please subscribe, like the video, tell your friends, and I'll be back same time, same place tomorrow from 7 p.m. for your Friday edition of MesmePolitics. You can email me, tobyjoshua2004@gmail.com. Get me on Twitter, @TobyJoshuaUK, Medium, @TobyJoshuaPolitics. Please subscribe, like the video to help us out with the algorithm. Let us know anything that you'd like to discuss. Thank you for getting in touch. You can always get in touch in the chat. This is all the latest in UK and US politics from a leftist perspective, and we will have more for you tomorrow.